Hello, and welcome to episode 41 of my podcast all about knitting and crochet and my little yarn shop here in Wiesbaden, Germany. I'm Kiko, and today is February 24th, 2020. Today I'm wearing a crochet shawl that's crocheted out of a mohair yarn with a little sparkle in it. And it's always difficult to show the pattern with black yarn, but because of the lace pattern, I think you can see the pattern. And this is not a normal shawl, but it's has this kind of V shape. So at the back, there's this big point. It looks like a triangular shawl, but then at the front, it has these two wings that kind of make it a V shape. Yeah, and it's really easy to get the shape by just crocheting 3 big squares that have the same size, and then you use 1 square for the back, and then you attach the other 2 squares at 2 of the sides, and then you get this wonderful shape. And I really like it because it keeps the back warm and it still has something that you can pull to the front. It sits nicely, it doesn't slide off. And I really like it a lot. And each of the 3 big squares consists of 4 little squares. And every square has this motif in the middle. And then when you put 4 of the squares together, you get this nice big flowery motif where they join. So I really like this pattern. The original pattern had you make this into a triangular shawl, so you had to do half squares, and I thought that looked rather tedious. And I've always wanted a shawl like this with these 2 wings that come to the front. And so I think this is the first time I did this V shape, and ever since I've really liked it. And I've done one other, which was constructed a bit differently, so it doesn't have 3 big squares, but I still plan on doing more of them. Yeah, so that's the shawl I'm wearing, and then I'm wearing this bright, warm pullover. It's a raglan top down with a fairly high neck and just straight down. And it's the Barnwood pullover by Grace Anna Farrow, and it's from the book November Knits. And this is what the pullover looks like in the book. So as you can see, I chose a completely different color, but I like the pattern, and I also like the fact that the pattern works on both sides. So you could turn it round. So this is the inside of the pullover, but still looks interesting. So sometimes if I take the pullover off, I'll just flip it inside out and then put it on the other way around, just to change things up a bit. I used Drops Big Delight. I think it's a pure wool yarn. Can't quite remember. And it was a fairly quick knit. You have to pay attention a little bit to the knits and purls, but it's nothing too difficult. I think 6 is the highest number you have to count to. And I really like that. So that's the things I'm wearing today. Now to my finished objects. I have one finished object this week, and that's these green socks out of opal yarn, Jazz, the series Jazz, and I knit them for the club that gives green socks to women with ovarian cancer. So I'm going to donate these socks, and some woman will get them, and the green is to symbolize hope and help and life and everything. Yep, so I finished these socks, and they're just very simple, just stockinette, no ribbing, fish lips kiss heel, and in German it's called a star toe. I don't know what the proper name is in English. I have to look it up. So next week, maybe if I remember, I'll let you know. So this is the only properly finished object I have this week. But there's one other project that's finished, and that's my Viajante. But it's not a proper finished thing because most of it was knit by my sister. So she knit all this stockinette part, which is quite big and huge. And all I did was add the lace pattern at the bottom with the beads in. So they're hard to see, but if you look closely, you can see the beads where the lines cross or meet. Yep. So this has been washed and blocked. Didn't block it very aggressively. I just pinned down the edge because it was rolling up even though there's mohair in it. But after I've washed it, since I've washed it, it's okay and fine. And it's beautiful and it's big and it's soft and I love it. So these are the two completely finished things. Then I have something that's almost finished, and that's my crochet blanket out of Catania cotton, the yarn that's in this shelf. And I decided to crochet a square and change color every round. So I started with the white and then went through the yellows and oranges, reds, pinks, blues, greens, browns, and then I ended with a gray. And now I finished crocheting all the colors I had when I started this square. I've added a few colors since, but there's no way of adding them in afterwards. So the main part of the square is done now. And now the only question is what to do with the edging. So one possibility is to add in some of the glitter yarn that I have from Catania. Or I could use the black and white yarn over there. Or I could leave it the way it is. So I haven't decided yet. But I've washed it, I've blocked it. And yeah, and it's very, very nice. I like it a lot. Okay, so I'll have to make a decision, and once I've made the decision, I can keep crocheting. So on to works in progress, and as usual, I'll start with all the socks or the stockings. So I'm knitting these glittery stockings for friends of mine, and I'm using two different colors. And I've done half the heel, and I was thinking of quickly finishing the heel before I record, but then I thought maybe it's quite funny to see that I'm using different needles now. So I've been knitting the main part of the stocking on the chiaogoo mini circular needles, and I really, really like them a lot. So this is the blue set because I'm using, I think it's 3.5 millimeter needles. Could be bigger. Or you can check my Ravelry page if you're interested. I think it's 3.5. And I use this small circular needle to knit all of that so far. But with the heel, because I have to go back and forth and I have to purl stitches. I'm not very good at purling stitches with these needles, especially if I have two of the short tips. So if I have a short tip and a long tip, and I have a long tip in my left hand, I don't mind purling. But with the two short tips, I don't really enjoy the purling. So when I got to the point where I need to add in the heel, I just picked up two double pointed needles and I used them to go back and forth, and I'm doing another Fish Lips Kiss heel, especially as I'm using the grey yarn doubled for the heel, and I had those two colors doubled for the for the leg, and I will also use those colors for the foot. So I'm quite happy I don't have these extra rounds that other short row heels tend to have. So yeah, Fish Lips Kiss heel is my favorite at the moment, and I'm doing that on double points, and then when I finish the heel, I'll go back to knitting on the circular needle, and then when I get to the toe, I have to go back to the double pointed because I will start decreasing stitches, and even this mini circular needle will be too long. Yeah, so I hope by next week I'll have this pair finished, and maybe I'll have started the second sock of the second pair. We'll see. So that was the first one. quite a few socks on the go at the moment. Maybe you remember that I cast on quite a few socks last week, or before last week. The second pair I have on my needles is this hand-dyed yarn by Wolldackel. And last week I showed you the first sock with the orange toe, but I had no heel in yet because it's an afterthought heel, but I've added the heel. So that's the same color as the toe, and I guess it's a basic afterthought heel. Nothing special. If I had thought about it, I could have done a few centimeters of stockinette stitch at the back of the leg, but I didn't think about it. And I don't think it'll be a problem, even if I wear shoes, to have these garter ridges on top of the heel. Yeah, and I quite like it. And it doesn't look that small anymore. Some people have been asking me who that sock is for because it looks so small and so tiny. But it makes quite a difference if there's a heel in there or not. I had started the second sock last week and I've continued knitting, not very far, but I've done maybe half the leg bit. Yep. So, and I have been thinking of doing the second afterthought heel maybe on camera if I can manage. So for people who haven't seen that yet, I know there's lots of videos out there to show that, but yep, I might still do that. So that was that. Then I have another pair of green socks that I want to donate, and that's with this garter stitch hearts on it. And I finished the first sock. I think it was already finished last week, wasn't it? Anyway, first one is finished and I've started the second one. I've done the first heart, and so that's that one. But I'm also knitting the Rocksolid socks that I showed you last week. Last week I'd done the pink and the orange bit. Now I've added the yellow bit and I've started the green part. And that's something I wanted to show you. I'm knitting the green in that sock from the same ball of yarn that I'm knitting the green sock. I weighed the first sock after I finished it, and I weighed the ball of yarn that I had, and I figured there must be enough yarn to do the green stripes in these socks as well as those two socks. So that's quite a funny situation at the moment, but I have two socks hanging from the same ball of yarn. And I think I'll quickly finish this stripe so I can go back to knitting that sock without having this hanging around, and then I can try and finish them both as quickly as possible. Yeah, the Rocksolid socks I'm knitting as part of the Lots of Socks knit along, and that's all the proceeds in that knit along went to Down Syndrome International, and I want to have the socks finished before March 21st because that's International Down Syndrome Day, and I plan to wear these socks on March 21st. And as I'm going to reverse the color order in my second sock, I will have two different socks, and that's what everybody's asked to do on March 21st, to wear different socks. If you're interested in that knit along, there's still quite a bit of time until March 21st. You can either look on Ravelry or on Instagram, and you can read all about the Lots of Socks knit along and the Down Syndrome Day International, or International Down Syndrome Day. That's it. Okay, then I was knitting the wrist warmer or the gloves without fingers or whatever. And I've only added a tiny little bit, but I've started the thumb increases. So that's a good point to be at. And so I will continue knitting that. That's another mini circular needle by chiaogoo, and that's the red set because these are thinner. I think I'm using the could be 2.5 or could be 2.75, I don't know, fairly thin, and gives me the right kind of fabric. And then when I prepared for my recording, I thought that I hadn't started anything new last week, but I have. Couldn't go a week without casting something on. So I cast on another pair of socks with another opal yarn, and that's the Cotton Premium. And these are new colors that came out last week. And whenever I get new colors, I always have to try them and knit a sample so people can see what it looks like knit up. So I chose this color, and this is the sock that I've started knitting. It's a very simple pattern that I've used several times before, and I'm thinking of writing it down as a sock recipe. Yeah, just for anyone who's interested. And I think I just got back to the orange, so I think this is about one color repeat of the yarn. So that's where I stopped. But now that I've shown it, I will continue knitting it and see if I can finish at least the first one quickly so I can put it in the shop window. And I'm knitting these on 2.25 millimeter needles, which is quite thin for me, but with cotton sock yarn, I usually go down a needle size to make sure that they are tight enough, because they tend to be a bit floppy. By the way, this yarn by Opal, the Cotton Premium, is 38% wool, 32% polyamide, and then 30% cotton. So they're not quite as warm as the woolen sock yarns, but still nice and warm. And yeah, with the cotton, they're just this bit softer and a bit, I think, better to wear with warm weather. So that was all the socks I'm knitting at the moment. And let's go on to my blanket. I've put 2 squares on my new memory blanket. Still very tiny, but I've added these 2 squares. Yeah, and I used those 2 yarns to knit these socks. And the funny thing about these is that with this sock, I striped the 2 balls. I changed the 2 balls every round, and with this one, I changed every 4 rounds. And I quite like the difference that gives. And this is what the yarns look like by themselves. That was one ball, that was the other ball. Yep, so still very tiny blanket, but we're getting there. So that's the memory blanket. Then I started the second piece of my trousers, my Känguruh shorts by Steve & West. And again, it's just a tiny little bit, but it's always important to get started and to get set up and have the marker in. And then once I know what's happening, I can just take it along someday and knit on it one evening. And then the next day I'll pick up the next project. But I always need some more time and concentration to start things. So it's good I started that. And yeah, then there's another project that I continued. And I don't know who of you is knitting the Mystery Gnome by Sarah Shearer from Imagined Landscapes. I had finished the hat last week, and since then we've started the body. And if anyone doesn't want to see what it looks like, must look away now, because now I'm going to show it. So that's the hat. I don't think I showed you the whole hat, did I? So this is the top of the hat. This is color 3. And I was pretty sure the body was going to be color 3, but as you can see, it's not. And this is how far we could go. And now I'm desperately waiting for the next bit of instructions. But I love it so far. I think it looks really, really funny and sweet, and I like it. And I can't wait to keep knitting. So I'm not quite sure when the next clues are going to come out, but as soon as they drop, I'll be there knitting them. So that's the gnome, and that leaves just the 2 knit-alongs. I'm taking part in. One of them is my own knit along, the Raglano that we're knitting in my Ravelry group. And I'm using this beautiful blue opal yarn in DK weight. And last week I showed you that I started the pattern. Oh, by the way, this time I remembered to bring the book. So this is the Japanese Knitting Stitch Bible. That's where I got the pattern from. Yep, I can show you the picture of the pattern. Oops. As it's white yarn, it's a lot better to see. So it's the one down here. So this is what I picked. But because my yarn is has many colors or many blues, it's not quite as clear to see. I think it'll probably be easier to see once it's washed and blocked. But even like that, I still like it. And I finished the first sleeve. So when I tried it on, I realized that if I added another full pattern, it'd be too long. But at first I just wanted to do 3 garter ridges, the way it's in the pattern, but then it would have been just a tiny bit too small. So I just added 2 more garter ridges and bound off. And I think it's the perfect length. I'll see when the second one is finished and I try it on again, I'll see. I've started the second sleeve, but I haven't got very far yet. So this is another of the chiaogoo mini circular needles, and that's the blue set again, as I'm knitting with the 4.0 4mm needle for this pullover. So that's the Raglano, that's the knit along that's happening in my Ravelry group and on my YouTube channel. And the other knit along I'm participating in is for the Hitofude, which is a Japanese pattern that I've knit before. I showed the jacket that I've already knit last week on my podcast. And I also told you that I wanted to knit the jacket again with this yarn, which is Wollmeise lace. And last week I just started picking up the stitches, and now I've knit 3 pattern repeats, which isn't a lot, but it's a start. Okay, I have to show it in front of my pullover. I think that's the best way to show off the lace pattern. It's a fairly simple lace pattern, which is good, makes it easy to knit. It still makes it light and airy, and yeah, I like it. So after I finished casting on the stitches, I realized I have the same number of stitches that the biggest size of jacket has, and that's because I want to have long sleeves, and the stitches that we cast on go from one arm across the back to the other arm, and then the first thing you knit is the arms, and so that's why I have a whole lot of stitches. And yeah, I have to find some time to keep knitting, and once this piece is high enough to go round my arm, then I can finish off the sleeves, and then I'll knit some ribbing, and then I'll knit the back and front down, but I'll show you when I get there. So the Hitofude is a really, really nice jacket, a very unique construction, and you can knit the whole jacket in one go. You never have to cut the yarn, you just start and then you cast off, and you have 2 ends to weave in if you happen to have a big ball of yarn like I do. So I'm really looking forward to that, but I'm going to take some time. It's very fine yarn, it's a lot of stitches, and the pattern is easy, but there is a pattern, so I do have to concentrate. I have to look at it. I can't just knit it mindlessly whenever. So this is going to take some time. Yeah, so that was all I worked on last week. I hope you enjoyed it. I guess you've realized that I've started a new channel for my English videos now. So if you happen to come across this video and you liked it, then please subscribe, give it a thumbs up if you want to, and I hope to see you in the next one.